The planet is heating up.
The oceans are becoming filled with plastic.
Change starts now. Change starts now.
We're on a countdown
To zero waste. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast. Here's your host, Laura Nash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zero Waste Countdown podcast and radio show. Have you ever dreamed of being an environmental consultant or wondered what they do? This episode features Larissa Rose, who joined me over the phone from Australia. She's the Director and Senior Environmental Consultant at Glowing Green, Australia. Larissa, I would like to learn a little bit about you and your career. And Glowing Green, is this a new thing that you started, or has this been going on for a while? Tell me about Glowing Green.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. So Glowing Green Australia was formed and started in 2010, and I started that just when I started my master's degree. And Glowing Green Australia is an environmental consultancy business, so we're a company that provide services around environmental assessment and environmental and sustainability education.
Awesome.
So we've been building since 2010, and now I have up to 4 employees, and I have a rotational system of anywhere from 2 to 3 interns per semester now.
Oh, good. Yeah, I read that you have some interns, and that's really nice. So how are you sort of helping the interns and fostering them kind of to be the next environmental leaders?
Absolutely. So that is a really big steadfast methodology that we have here at Glowing Green Australia. And a lot of that obviously comes from my aspirations of ensuring that we have a duty of care to build the leaders of the future. So
Nice.
whether that's in environmental waste or whether you're doing that in, building the leaders of the future in marketing or whatever your company is in your sector you work in. So we have felt that it's really important to have a double effect on that. One part is obviously to nurture and grow graduates who are transitioning from their degrees into the real world and reality to ensure that they are up to date and up to speed on what the industry and the current market are needing and wanting when they leave university. Going from coursework to the reality, as you know, in real world is sometimes very different.
Yes.
So we want to ensure that we can manage that and mitigate any gaps where there could be with that as a company. So that's why we take on those interns to support that. But the other sort of ethical thing that we have that runs alongside that is ensuring that we really, truly show what leadership is in the workplace. And that is our other duty of care that we have. So what that means is, Laura, is we want to make sure that we are mentoring and building people to be equipped to have a different skill set than just doing coursework. So we actually like to show and replicate through modeled behaviour the difference between having a leader and a boss. And then also within that, we sit down and do a lot of workshop time sitting with them, actually getting quite accountable and true to what their goals are, what they're wanting to do and achieve. And that pretty much just means sitting down and mapping out and mapping where are you going? Do you know the top 5 companies you want to work for? Why do you want to work for them? Do you believe and know their ethics enough? Or are you just wanting to work with them because you think they're the best? But really, if you break down to it, are they the kind of company and business that aligns to your own personal ethics? Which I guess at the end of the day is Sustainability 101, which is your own well-being and mindset, who you work for, as well as, the industry and sector that you work for as well.
Mm-hmm. You can't save the world if you are not being able to save yourself or keep yourself healthy, right? So it's good to take care of yourself, and then you can go out and work on these bigger problems, I find. So that's really great that you're doing that, and it's nice. I think it's a little different for women too. We have different ways of being leaders sometimes, and it's nice that you're doing that and fostering that next generation. You started this company when you were doing your master's, so you were doing both at the same time?
I
Wow.
did. I had this grand idea when I was in my master's because I had already done my environmental work and studies before, and I went back to do my master's just before I had my 3rd child, and I had this profound, amazing green light bulb moment where I was, well, you know what, I really want to take a sense of ownership and change in direction, and I I kind of don't like dropping the word entrepreneurship because I feel like it's so washed over and used so much. But I just wanted to take an ownership to go, well, I would really like to determine and change my trajectory and my outcomes, and me be able to be really specific and accountable on what change I actually want. So to do that, I need to command and dictate how I really want that transition to happen and occur. So I was sitting in an economics class and I was like, I'm going to start a company called Glowing Green Australia. We're going to be an environmental consultancy company that's going to specialise in environmental, reporting and assessment and auditing and waste management and all of that regulatory approval process. But also alongside that, we're going to ensure that we facilitating education and really getting grassroots approach action happening on the ground as well. So I started that in 2010. I pretty much gained a contract quite quickly, and then it just progressed from there, working in my spare office in my home like a lot of us do to keep it real. And then before I knew it, I had some really great opportunities to start to transition to finding an office space and, went through the feelings of walking through the gravel road sometimes as you do when you're building a business, but was really mindful to get out there on the ground and get quite clear and concise about what our actionables were and what services we could provide as a business. And then from there, that's given us that capacity now to have a really great office and a really great team, and we've built ourselves slowly and sustainably. So I guess that's the key word as well.
What was the first type of project that you landed?
It was around my first contract, which was around regulatory report writing as per the Australian federal regulations for the environment. It was around land clearing, which when you're an environmental consultant, it's really challenging because you dance with the devil a lot with your contract work. So it's so hard sometimes, Laura, because your ethics get really challenged. And this land clearing was around for development work out in more regional Queensland, which is the state of Australia in the top right-hand corner. And I guess for me, it was that first time of realising if you're an environmental consultant, you either go work with some of the biggest contributors to climate change, which is in our mining and heavy construction side of things that have the biggest environmental portfolios, which they really do. Like if you want to go work for some of those big mining company names, they have the biggest environmental portfolios, which are quite ludicrous as you as a graduate to go and do a graduate program with them. But then you're kind of advocating and working for some of the biggest carbon releases in the world. So it is that dancing with the devil, the ethics of being an environmental consultant, but you believe in what you're doing because you're trying to find the best pathway to reduce, mitigate or adapt those changes or changes that occurred or changes that will keep occurring. So my first contract was around land clearing, which was that first feeling, that sense of how do you find a safe space to feel comfortable with taking on work, which is obviously causing, change on a land basis, but you were trying to ensure that it's being done per the code and the regulations. And then you're adding your extra essence inside that to go, well, no, we need to find a different pathway for this development to occur because we want to, reduce the amount of trees or the regional ecosystem that could get damaged. So that was the first contract, which had a double effect of me realizing the whole ethical part too.
Yeah. Sometimes I think people in the zero waste world get really angry at some of the big companies because they're having such a bad detrimental impact. But sometimes it's those companies who, with just a little change, will have a ripple effect that will make such a positive impact.
You are so right.
Yeah.
For sure. Some of those smaller companies that have to work like contractors and companies that say you're contracted to a gas company that might want to clear land to put coal seam gas in, you as a smaller independent consultant that have very strong ethical issues around environmental management compared to maybe as much as a larger multinational company. You know that you can make a very progressive shift and change to go, no, we need to find another pathway because there are too many certain specific trees that will get damaged on that. And you go outside the parameters of what those specifications are and rules are by a national policy to go, well, this is business as usual on how the policy will go. But us as an independent consultancy firm, because we have our own duty of care and our reputation as a company, we are going to go beyond that because we have a set of standards within ourselves to make sure that you as a company, so say it was that gas company, to go, no, we're going to take it a bit further and we're going to let you know that you can actually advocate later on that you as a company went beyond the usual specifications the law would have said to say, no, we decided to really change this development. We spent an extra 10 grand on changing the pathway of that land clearing because we were able to reduce this much damage or this much. And that's the pressure point a smaller company and a consultancy firm can put on those larger companies to change, whereas if they were internally doing it, they may not have that same ethical issue.
I'm into communications, so even if you just had this little blog about how sustainable you were, if you were the gas company and everything's really great, maybe people wouldn't pay that much attention to it. Maybe they would, but it's nice to have these things in your back pocket also for when something goes wrong. And I'm just thinking about my work in public affairs when I was in the military, that if somebody says, oh my gosh, look at you, gas company, you just did this bad thing. It's like, well, we're sorry, we made this mistake. We're trying, and like, look at all these really nice things that we're doing. And we're, environment is really important to us and all this stuff. So I think it's nice to have that record as well, right? Just for as you go forward.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot of forums and community groups, when they get together and discuss, development stuff that's going on or something that's happening in the area or the region, that there does tend to be that bandwagon that people get on when it's a big company or a construction development that might be happening in the area, that everyone just seems to default to, you're like doing this, this, and this, and this. And the example of what you said with the gas is very true, that a lot of these companies are being very progressive and taking a big sense of ownership. It's just hard for them to talk through the white noise of going, well, actually, yeah, we know we're doing this clearing. However, this is what we have been doing, but you've never allowed us that chance. You can do as much publications and branding and marketing about what they are doing, but it's just going to hit a wall if no one wants to listen to it. And the only time they listen sometimes is when the placards are out and the pickets are out. So it's so true. And that mentality that happens a little bit sometimes in community, which the most recent one, I had to stand up at a community forum and go, look, well, hey, there's another narrative that sits alongside this, is that a lot of these companies and businesses are taking progressive ownership around how they are going to look at finding, sourcing other types of concrete that might be greener. Or the supply chain now, they're trying to mitigate the consumption of products. They're trying to find a company that doesn't package the windows or the different products that got to come to a construction. They're trying to look at how to mitigate that waste stream. So they are taking progressive action, even though you're just seeing that it's a 10-story building that's going on and everyone's bagging it. There is other progressive work that these businesses are doing, and don't be quick to just jump and go to default reactiveness about stuff. So I feel for both sides. It's very hard sometimes, and it is a lot, as you would have known from your experience. Getting that communications out is a tough gig on a public relations issue.
Yeah. I brought a person who invests in a lot of mining on the show and does really well at it. And he said, if people are upset about the mining, you just have to decrease the demand. Like, there's such a demand for the newest iPhone, the newest technology, all these new things. And that's what's sort of driving it. So that's why on our show, we try and talk about decreasing demand, but not losing jobs, because if we don't have an economy, then I feel, at least in Canada anyway, that people will start taking our natural resources more so to survive, because it's so cold here. Like, we need oil and gas where we are at the moment. And so we're trying to find other ways of doing things here in Canada. But right now it's tough. And, that whole forest is there. And I'm always worried about our forests, because I'm a forest person. I love it. And I'm just like, ooh, let's make sure we keep our resources where they are and grow forward, the best that we can, and get away from fossil fuels without taking something worse, I guess I'm trying to say. But let's go back to some of the other things that you do in your company. So I was reading something about cafes. So you have done a collaboration with some cafes in your area?
Yes, again, with that community, it's all about at a grassroots level we can start to shift and make that change. And a part of our business work that we do is around auditing and assessment, and that's around water, waste and energy. So we have done a lot of work with that, with just general companies, but also a lot with schools as well. There's been a lot of progressive work with schools, but with the cafes, they've begun to, I guess, that that shift in the market from the consumers is a lot around now that waste stream narrative. And we've started to begin to have conversations with some of the local cafes in our area and have begun the process of starting to do the auditing and waste management assessment. So what that means is we're going in now and looking at the volumes of waste and doing all of that, auditing and assessment on actual stats and data of what they've got, and then looking at how we can start to mitigate and create minimising consumption pathways. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is around letting them understand the sense of ownership that they have with the different companies and businesses out there that are now providing cafes with lower impact or waste and packaged products, whether that's more bulk waste or looking at how they've got a reusable container system that they can use. So, yeah, that's been going really well. The biggest thing is because there's always obviously a financial element that's attached to those services, is really building a culture with those owners to have that, empowering them with that sense of ownership that you're investing in this comes back to you with your branding and PR and public relations side, is that this is a very important narrative. We'll do the work, and then this is a very good conversation that you can let your community know now. And to help differentiate yourself from other cafes in the area or the region about your sense of duty of care, I don't call it corporate social responsibility, I call it community social responsibility for those businesses. And I like to change that CSR terminology, because instilling in them and having those conversations with those cafe owners is a big part of that first work that we do. And some of them take a little bit of time, some of them already have that sense of ownership. And it's really great. So we're starting to see that uptake, and then you can see that sense of positivity that comes out of the cafe owners now to go, well, yeah, like we've changed some better waste management practices. We're instilling that in our staff, which is in turn showing leadership.
Oh, good,
back
yes.
to modelling leadership. Yeah. And then just simple systems and processes that can be done. Some cafes want to take it to a higher level. Some are like, okay, well, can we just get 3 different streams of separating waste? And then we'll go, look, let's just do that first. Let's get you comfortable with that. And then we can transition across to greater, waste stream management.
Have you ever introduced the possibility for the staff to just say, for here to go? And the reason I ask is because when I go to a coffee store here in Canada, I see everybody sitting down and talking, and they're all drinking out of the garbage cups. And I think, if the barista just said, for here to go, you could probably, over a giant chain like Starbucks or something, save millions of cups from going to the trash a year, right?
Yeah, you are so right. And that is around behavioural management.
Yeah.
And we noticed a lot. You're so true on that, Laura, because with the schools implementing those programs, we've had to work a lot on changing the teaching and the culture and the thought processes that people have about transitioning to lower, zero waste solutions. And then that is so true when customers come in and order a coffee. It happens here in Australia. You see, and I'm like, look at these people sitting down have got like takeaway cups. Like, what's going on there? Yeah. And it is all around, if you train your staff to go, letting these people come into your cafe to go, your staff are the point of sale. That point of sale is where you can determine the culture on the accountability that your consumers have. So are they going to, you need to ask those questions, which is all around just lovely engagement anyway. Well, what's your choice today? Like, are you planning to sit down? Because we've got a new overarching change that we're doing now. So we'd love all of our customers, if they're going to sit down, that they actually drink out of one of our amazing mugs and cups that we have that we can reuse and rewash, because we're planning to reduce our, all of our takeaway cup consumption. And then just kind of having a little bit of a narrative around that. So we have begun, that conversation a little bit. Sometimes it's easy done for some cafes. Some cafes are, okay, yeah, well, we need to probably spend time then sitting and working with our staff about changing that default behaviour and not even asking. But, yeah, let's start a revolution on that, behavioural change at the point of sale.
Yeah, that's well said. And it's kind of a free change, and then it would save them money over time. Well, I mean, this is where it's so important where you come in, I'm sure, is doing the cost analysis of, okay, this is how much, 1,000 garbage cups cost, plus the cost of getting rid of it with a waste management system, with the paying for the trucks to take it away or whatever, and versus buying a whole new fleet of cups where you can drink in the cafe. So is that sort of something you would do, is like figure out all those costs for businesses?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is where the amazing part on data, that auditing, that data is the most powerful narrative to have with business owners or with schools, when we work with schools and we showcase how much paper is getting used at the school every week. And then you grab all of that and you turn that into what that is comparative to CO2 emissions, what that means economically, so environmentally, economically. And when you say, well, did you know this is how much you spend per year on cups? And just by changing 5 people every day in your cafe to transition to that. So we give all of that stats in data, and that's why it's so valuable to do that auditing assessment side, because that is the most powerful narrative. We all know when it starts hitting the hip pocket, that's the first thing. And that's, to be honest, people will go, yeah, we want to do it environmentally, but the biggest driver is the economic one. We all know that. As you said before, it changes a country like Canada understands its dependency on energy. It's a very energy-heavy intensive country because it needs it to keep the country and the humans on it warm. And that's the same with businesses. They look at it and go, whoa, okay, so you're meaning if we don't have to buy that many cups per year now, and I'm reducing that much per cubic metre of bin use every year, which equates to this much reduction in waste services fees that I don't have to pay. When you start shaping up that narrative and do that sort of Excel spreadsheet data information, you actually start to game change people's thoughts about it.
If you came to Laura Nash's cafe, let's say you came to me and said, hey, and we're going to pitch and say, hey, we can consult for you and turn you green and save you a bit of money. It would be awesome. Would you have data from another similar cafe? Because I've always wondered, because I've thought about asking a company in my hometown if they would consider switching cones, ice cream cones, instead of putting them all in those cups. But it's like, how do I get their data first without approaching them first? So do you just use comparative data from other similar companies or?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're starting new ones, we just sometimes just do general data assessment work where we'll go, okay, well, we're pitching to a new company with a different waste stream that we may not have a comparative from another business. We'll use that blueprint from another business and keep it quite general so they don't know who the company is. But we would just kind of do an equivalent. So let's do some baseline assumption assessment data. Let's say they had this many people that use those many cups, or just ask them for some general idea on, how many people out of a ratio in a day. Is it say you have, 200 sales, how many people take the cup? Just get that general assumption data and go from there. And then you work that out per day, per week, per year, and then give that general data, and then you can go from there. And then you can work out, the baseline data you have, we know how much footprint probably is in those little paper cups that totally cannot be recycled very well because of their lining and everything in them. And then what that means is per volume equivalent to going to landfill, so we can grab carbon and stats and data, that general data that's available. So you can kind of shape it up, and that's how you would do the pitch. So I would go to Laura Nash's cafe or ice cream shop.
Welcome.
And then, hi, how are you, Laura? And I thought it'd be really valuable that we came to you today and gave you a really good understanding on what it means from the, carbon footprint from your cafe and the opportunity that you have as a business owner into the community and how you could contribute to reducing the amount of landfill. And that's a really great discussion piece that you could, have come across to your consumers. But also, if there was that situation where you knew that you still needed that option, let's look at finding some alternative products that provide you with that. So maybe it might be some sort of type of cone that is in the shape of a little cup. Now, I know a coffee company that make a waffle type little in your hand coffee cup that they use as a dessert option for people that like to have their coffee, and then they've got like this little cute cup thing. But that's another discussion anyway. But there's, there could be an opportunity for you, Laura, as a coffee shop ice cream owner, to look at, well, hey, I understand you can't completely remove the cup, but let's look at a transition pathway on how we might be able to change that.
Yeah.
So, we just give you some general data, and then when you're ready, you'd be like, okay, well, could we just look at doing a scope of work, Larissa? So let's just look at what it would mean for you to come in and do a good overarching assessment, give us some stats and data, some suggestions and recommendations on a pathway, how we could reduce this much carbon, how we could have a greater narrative to our community and our consumers and our customers. And then from there, say this is the cost, this is the price, this is what we can provide for you. So that's how we do it. And then we need to go into those numbers and get your books and your data to really, get quite specific too.
Yeah, because wouldn't that be amazing if we had more consultants like you that were in different countries, right? Like, I don't think you would be afraid of someone competing against you who's in, California or something that's like really far away. And I think North America really needs this, because there are businesses all around me, Larissa, that are just doing crazy things and could change so much. And sometimes it's just like we said, like just for here to go. Like that is a very, very simple thing. And then I'm sure it gets very complex up from there when you're talking about fossil fuels and stuff like that. And I know that you know a lot about biofuel and stuff. And so I don't want to get into it too much, but I just wonder a little bit about the biofuel work that you're doing. And I'll ask you why it's better than fossil fuels.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to help with the audience, my role in HAT has been in my master's degree. I studied and researched a lot around the economic viability of Australia comparative to other countries and nations around the world, have been doing and using biofuels and the renewable fuels of the future, which are even more lower carbon intensive. So just to keep it as layman's as we can and not sound too sciencey, so my work was around studying and researching that. And biofuels, as we all know, I'll keep that as a general word and not get too caught up, are lower carbon fuels comparative to the use of liquid fossil fuel. So I understand in the Northern Hemisphere we use the word gasoline a lot. So we have gasoline and diesel, which are called petrol and diesel in Australia. So they're a carbon-intensive fuel. They are what we call a liquid fossil fuel, and they provide the opportunity for us to do one of the biggest carbon-intensive industries in the world, which is transportation. Mm-hmm. So that will be for shipping, aviation, heavy transport. So that's for our heavy trucks, and then obviously for passenger car fleets. So we need liquid fossil fuels to move around the world on those. Those fuels are used obviously also for the economic viability of a country and their industries and sectors like construction, mining, agriculture, and which is sometimes the backbone of moving goods and products and services, and resources getting mined and things like that moving around a country. So lower carbon fuels are fuels that are obviously less CO2 carbon intensive compared to oil, like liquid fossil fuel. So those fuels are pulled from oil. Oil is extracted out of the earth, and then it's cleaned up and refined to produce the fuels that you see at the service station at the Bowser, which is usually, gasoline, your diesel, and then for shipping, the dirtiest fuel in the world. Shipping and cargo freight uses heavy intensive sulfur, the gunk, we like to call it the muck, the dregs.
Is that
those fuels are used.
Is that the bunker fuel for giant
Correct.
ships? Yeah, I knew that was very
bunker
dirty.
Fuel.
Yeah.
Oh, horrific amount of sulfur. And then the cleaner refined fuels like jet fuel that are used as well. So those two industries are the biggest carbon mitigating industries now. They, on a global regulatory space, are taking a very big accountability on the carbon intensity of those fuels. So just to pull it back down, my work has been to advocate and push and promote for Australia to transition to lower carbon fuel alternatives. So we have had not a very big overarching federal accountability in Australia to transition to alternative options for liquid fuels. So we have alternatives with wind and solar, which is renewable energy. So when you look at the energy matrix of a country, like comparative to Canada, you have a dependency for electricity and how do you decarbonise the electricity sector. But you also need to understand the other side of the energy matrix pie chart is the dependency on liquid fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Which is obviously moves the backbone of a country. So it's very quick. People think about renewable energy and they forget about liquid fossil fuels and how dependent countries are on those fuels. Australia is heavily dependent on liquid fossil fuels. We now import 96% of our liquid fossil fuels from overseas. We do not refine and clean those fuels up in our own country now.
So you basically need that dirty bunker fuel just to get the fuel over to you, right?
You absolutely nailed it. And just to give some stats and data, in Australia, the Australian economy consumes about 24 billion litres of diesel annually in this country. I don't have stats for Canada, and I should have been more prepared and had something which would have been a good comparative to Canada. So we understand in that energy matrix we have to find alternatives to support coal-fired electricity, and then we have to find, which is wind and solar, and then we have to find alternatives for using fossil fuels, liquid fuels. So there has not been a lot of progressive work on a federal issue to help mitigate the use of those fuels. So that's where myself and my hat, after my research, I worked with industry and co-founded an industry association called the Queensland Renewable Fuels Association, which was to create an industry body that will support and advocate the uptake and use of lower carbon renewable fuels.
So is that like the palm oil uses biofuel?
No.
Oh.
So in Australia, we have been producing biofuels, which is called ethanol, and biodiesel, which might be quite familiar for your audience. They are generally the 101 biofuels that are produced around the world. Those fuels are made from something called a feedstock, which is very different all around the world. And in the United States, ethanol is predominantly produced from cornstarch, so a non-food corn. The starch from that is extracted out to produce ethanol. And biodiesel is generally made from tallow, so animal fats from the rendering process, and different types of vegetable oils to produce biodiesel. So they are sort of generally those feedstocks that have been used. In Brazil, ethanol has been made from sugarcane. We make ethanol from sugarcane as well in Australia. We also make ethanol from something called sorghum, which is a little red grain. Sometimes you see it in birdseed. Sorghum, they ferment sorghum and then they make ethanol out of that. So they're feedstocks that are available. And then also we make biodiesel from tallow and vegetable seed oil crops as well. So that's how we use it. There is no use of any product, any biofuels in Australia from palm oil.
Good, because that's what I worry about. Because we know that there's a lot of problems with palm oil, so that's good.
The market is demanding now that the certification and international sustainability and carbon certificate accreditation is given for biofuels to reduce and remove the narrative around the food versus fuel, which is a very old myth which completely needs to be rebunked. It has to be debunked. And is around the sustainability. So that's called a life cycle analysis. So that is done in a lot of different supply chains for products, is where that is how you get the comparative figure to say that this type of renewable diesel or biojet fuel is 75% less CO2 comparative to normal jet fuel.
When it burns, like when it comes out your tailpipe, or is that the whole process of everything?
That's the process from farm to fuel tank.
Right, versus extracting oil from the ocean or deep underground or whatever you're doing. And then does it burn cleaner as well, like out the tailpipe? Is it cleaner to burn the biofuel?
Absolutely.
Okay,
so
cool.
Oxygenated cleaner fuels. So they reduce their cleaner burning, they're more efficient, and they're oxygenated fuels, and some of those replicate the same hydrocarbon chain as what a fossil fuel hydrocarbon chain is. From also within that, when we look at the air quality standards, this is the big progressive work that the California Air Quality Standards Board has done, is that when you burn fossil fuels, yes, you're burning carbon, and the carbon intensity that's gone in to extract fossil fuels. Now, some people talk about, maybe the biofuels are just as the same carbon intensity as what it is for that. No, they're not, because let's look at how much fuel is pulled out of the Arabian countries, and Korea and Russia are some of the biggest oil-producing countries as well. And that oil is shipped to Singapore to get cleaned and refined. Then that's picked up from Singapore and spread out to different countries, because Singapore is one of the biggest refining nations in the world now for oil, crude oil. And then that's transported to, say, Australia. And then that oil then has gone to the port. And then that fuel is then put into more transportation to get to it. Meanwhile, 150 kilometres away or 300 kilometres away, there's a local refinery that's producing ethanol and helping support growers and farmers to do crop rotational feedstocks, not taking away any food whatsoever, because they have fallow land. And a lot of growers and farmers will know you need to let your land breathe. You need to let it have space. You need to grow a fallow crop to put more nitrogen and to rejuvenate the soil. So there's an opportunity now for growers to be able to grow a feedstock that can feed into making locally grown fuel that is only going 500 kilometres or 300 kilometres to the port to get cleaned up and refined and blended into an ethanol fuel blend, comparative to oil that was pulled out of Korea or Russia and then had to get all the way back to exactly where that ethanol fuel is going to sit next to it, the Bowser.
So we have the same problem right now, which is very interesting. So we have this Alberta oil, and we're getting, I don't know if it's like 40% or something of our oil is being shipped in from the very similar countries that Australia is getting the oil from. And so Canadians are starting to wake up and say, why are we importing so much oil from other countries when we could just be using our own? And then that saves on that dirty bunker fuel that's coming from those ships, right? And we have very, very strict regulations with our oil industry. I think it's the strictest in the world, but I'm not sure. I've heard that it is, but I haven't fact checked that. So it's interesting that we're having similar issues, but on the other side of the planet.
Absolutely. And that's a lot around the fuel quality standards. And I know Canada and the Advanced Biofuels Association in Canada and the work being led by some of the pivotal biofuel lawyers in the United States are pushing to help advocate and promote for Canada to get a transition policy in place, whether that's from a state by state jurisdiction sort of level or as a whole nation, on transitioning across and really looking at how do we decarbonise our dependency on liquid fossil fuels in this country and advocate and push for agricultural waste streams and different types of multi-stipple feedstocks that can be now used, because there are so many amazing technologies out there that can enable those waste streams to be converted into alternative fuels. And that's where that opportunity sits with regulations that have been done, as we've seen in California. California is the most leading state in the world with its very progressive incentivizing markets for the push for companies to be able to use and to transition across to lower carbon fuels like a renewable diesel, a biojet fuel, which in turn helps lower the carbon footprint, reduces the dependency on liquid fossil fuels that state will be dependent on, but also helps with the air quality standards, because when you burn fuel at the tailpipe, it's not just that whole discussion I had before about the fuel coming from out of the oil in the ground and the carbon intensity that it has there, but also the noxious emissions that affect the particulate matter that comes out of the tailpipe, which in turn affects human health and in turn is a social issue.
Yeah, exactly. This is interesting. And it's funny because I remember when I was younger, it came out that at the gas station, there were like stickers of corn. And I think they had a face, like it was like this happy corn. It was like ethanol, we're adding a certain percent of corn. So I've always known that it's been around a little bit.
Having that baseline fuel, petrol, like no, I'm talking about the United States now, but in the United States, all petroleum, gasoline, has 10% ethanol in its stock standard to displace 10% of the country's dependency on importing that fuel or using that fuel. So that's what your happy smiley face will be. Will be the ethanol that has displaced 10% fossil fuel, which is cleaner burning, more efficient and better for your vehicle, reduces the carbon buildup inside an engine, and all of the Euro 5 and Euro 6 specification vehicles, engine technology vehicles that are coming in now as a part of the market are demanding cleaner burning fuel and are work more efficiently and effective on those cleaner oxygenated fuels. So that choice that a consumer has when they stand there at that bowser is a very powerful choice, because you are making a choice to go, I'm going to not advocate and push for 100% fuels. I'm going to do a 90% blend or a 50% blend. But I'm also going to understand that what that means to a grower and a farmer in the region, what that means for different technologies to now take everyday household rubbish and convert that over to making a fuel, which was a waste stream that needed to be managed somehow. So that's the choice that you as a consumer have. And then in turn making sure that a particulate matter called PM2.5, which is the most carcinogenic and impacting particle which goes down into your bloodstream when you breathe it in, that you are going to reduce that from being in the air that we breathe.
And is that from fossil fuels burning out the tailpipe? Yeah.
Absolutely. So some ethanol blends, it all varies from the feedstock they're made from, but they can reduce that particle anywhere from 30% out of 10% blend. So if there's 10% ethanol in that gasoline, you're looking at anywhere as a reduction of 30% of that particulate matter being reduced out of that fuel when it's burnt to the tailpipe.
I worry about children growing up in cities if they're going to be okay, with all of this pollution, and it's definitely been a concern for a while. And sometimes I think the younger generation is going to lead us in the right way and fix all of our problems, and then I will go to like a concert where it's all people way younger than me, and I'll see like the mess that they leave afterwards. I'm sure you've seen those pictures of a concert, and it's like a field of trash after it, But there is a lot of hope in our younger generation, and you have a new program. It's called Glowing Green Crusaders. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so exciting. And as we know, we have this wave of amazing environmental stewardship that is coming through, and accountability that our new generation know they've got to deal with the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution. I think we're up to Industrial Revolution number 4 now, and the baby boomers era has steadfastly put a lot of pressure now on our younger generation. So our program, Glowing Green Crusaders, just started as an environmental education program that we ran in schools over the last 7 years. And that was just really around promoting and giving a lot of awareness in schools to younger students between the ages of, 5 to 12 around their ownership. And then we just recently converted that program to a social media platform. It's an environmental leadership campaign, and it's to showcase and advocating outstanding environmental stewardship with children between the ages of 5 and 12 in our communities. And we really wanted to, as a company, really recognise some outstanding efforts and really meaningful change that we've seen a lot of these kids in these programs that we've been teaching in schools doing. And we're like, what is anyone doing to promote them? So we just launched that about a week ago, and kids can nominate and their parents can nominate them, and they will be showcased on our Instagram and our Facebook and our website to highlight the work that they've done. And some of these students got amazing Instagram pages on what they've been doing, whether it's one, 10-year-old on the western side of Australia that really pushed and lobbied for the local politician to put recycling bins in the local park. We want to promote and advocate that. Mm-hmm. Or it might be the, 8-year-old who is doing great work every Sunday, walking with his parents, cleaning up rubbish. And we want to, really nurture that and instill that and showcase that. And then that works alongside our environmental cleanup days that we do. We do free education in childcare, just to, talk with kids about that. And we've had a lot of cleanup days with 4, 5-year-olds coming to help do a beach cleanup day for a day and a half, for an hour and a half, I should say. Mm-hmm. And then we put all the rubbish out on a big tarpaulin, and then we separate it and we talk about that. And we talk about what do we do and how do we manage that. And that is good because it instills growth and confidence with this younger generation, but it puts a pressure point on accountability of the parents who are attending to see the change. And this is where we go back to that behavioural change, because some of the parents didn't realise that there's an opportunity now to take all of the soft plastics, the scrunch plastics, the ones that can scrunch in your hand, take them back to the supermarket and put them in that certain bin. And that's where the education works on 2 different levels. That's what a lot around that. That's what a lot of that was about, that Glowing Green Crusaders program, and we wanted to advocate that on a social media platform. Yeah,
that's so nice for kids, to recognize them, because sometimes these things go unrecognized and you don't want people to say, well, why am I doing this, all the time? So this is just wonderful. And how do you get funding for that? Is there money from the school board to bring in these education programs?
Yes, correct. There is. Some schools we do full sustainability environmental plans. So we go in as independent consultants, mm-hmm. and we run a sustainability plan and program from the sustainability committee through to all that data and assessment and analysis and auditing work that I mentioned to you, through to driving a sustainability and vision plan, to putting in initiatives in the schools, to supporting their marketing and narratives on how they communicate that to the community, but also what they mean on a sustainability development goal, so we keep them on accountable. So we have programs that are full consultancy packages and contracts that we do with schools. Then we have schools that might do a smaller, lower key level where we just go in and promote every school term or semester, a program that works alongside their environmental, accountability that they want to do, that works along the curriculum. And then we fund ourselves to do those beach cleanup days for free. And then we invite childcares or kindergarten services to come and be involved and do a lot of community partnerships. So we do that kind of collaboration community work, which is great because, as you know, from PR perspective, it is beneficial and we can have that narrative and work together and be seen as a collective in the community doing that work. So mm-hmm. some work's contracted, some is we feel like that duty of care that we have as a business to have our community, social responsibility, not corporate. We change it to community to support and enable. And we also pressure point the local councillors, your local politicians in the region, whether that's just at a local community level or a federal level. Mm-hmm. We pressure point them to be involved and to get grassroots on the level at seeing it for how it is. So we showed one of our local councillors, which is like a senator for you, to go, can you see how much cigarettes are going on here? Look at how many we've just collected in an hour.
Oh my gosh,
1,500 cigarette butts. You need to start implementing programs in place.
Yeah.
So, sort of putting them in that face value level. So that us as a separate company and a business, we've got that duty of care to keep them accountable and on their toes to go, 45% of this rubbish we collected today could be put in a recycling bin, and a recycling management plan for public recycling needs to be put in place. You don't have anything. It's about time that you do. Mm-hmm. So that helps us do a really great soft lobbying level as well.
Yeah. It's very different, talking to children if they're 5 years old or 12 years old. So I think that would be a big challenge to cater the programs. Or maybe not. Maybe they're responsive to the same one. But I've done a few different presentations, and the age difference makes it interesting. My son saw a recycling presentation when he was 7, and the person who did it is my friend. And she was over at my house one day and was like, "Do you remember me?" And my son said, "Nope." And she said, "Well, I gave that recycling presentation. You don't remember?" And he's like, "No." And then he said, "Well, is it the one with the transformer picture?" And my friend looked at me and said, on one slide out of about 20 or something, there was this one tiny photo of a transformer. And that's all my son took away from the presentation because he was so young. And I thought, oh my gosh, like you have such a difficult job to try and get this message out.
Yes, for sure. We've got World Environment Day, and we'll be running a program in one school which will be for 6 and 7-year-olds. And we have to specifically curtail it to be around that. How do you anchor them to have that, retain that data and information? Mm-hmm. Whether that would be like a hands-on thing for them to be able to physically be involved and remember that as well. Yeah.
I always thought it would be cool if you could just bring in like 40 bags stuffed with some sort of air. So you could be like, do you know how many trash bags a family produces, and then just bring in one garbage and then bring in another garbage bag and another garbage bag and have them like pile up into this massive mountain. I think the kids would be like, oh my gosh, what's going on, But how would you ever transport that? Or like you'd have to like use a reusable balloon or something to blow them up. I don't know. Because if I was a kid, I think I would have I always remembered things when people were moving around and doing things with lots of visuals and attention grabbing things. I'm always trying to think of ways to make those messages stick. It's a challenge. But
you know what? And a good one for that is so true. We just did, one school we collected just the waste through the week. Mm-hmm. And then we did a full separation.
Ooh.
All the primary school kids, we had to separate all these waste, like all the yogurt tub containers, all of those plastic sippy yogurt ones, the ones where you crack the lid off and, siphon it down really quickly. And then we did simple things like we've got to stack up all the yogurt cups, and then we want the kids to stand next to them to, to retain, oh my goodness, like, mm-hmm. We imagine this was only 1 week of yogurt cups, and this school didn't even have recycling. So we were showing how much of recyclable products were going to landfill and the accountability this primary school had. And stacking all the yogurt cups up a little bit like trying to do Lego and having kids stand next to the pile of them was how we retained them on that level that anchors to them, which is so right, Laura, is, oh, yeah, I remember that. Like we were being silly and we were stacking all those yogurt tubs and we were standing in front of them getting photos about how high this would be if it was 1 year's worth. And you have to do that for sure.
And while they're doing it, they'd be like, oh, that was mine. That was my strawberry yogurt. And that was your peach yogurt, right? Mm. Did you wash them, though? Like, if you collected it for a week, were they washing all their trash? Because I think by Friday, a yogurt cup from Monday would be yucky.
No, we didn't. No, we just kept it. And everyone was covered in gloves and stuff. And we, as senior people, we did the first day, we did the separation with the kids. And then the end of the week for the big one, it was done by, qualified people to do it because of health safety regulations. It was actually very impacting for the operational management staff at the school. They were actually probably more mortified on the amount of waste and accountability that school had been doing on letting those type of waste streams, which is generally most waste, about 40% of it can be recycled. We are progressing now because of different technologies that can take different types of waste streams now and actually convert them. We're moving up to about 55, maybe 60 in some instances of waste that could be put across into a recyclable form. But it was the management that looked at that and went, wow. And then that's when we got that stats and data and went, oh, this is equivalent to this much ton per year. This is how much ton of stuff that you're putting in landfill. So imagine what all the other schools in Australia would be doing. So, yeah, that's where it starts to pinch you in the side sometimes when you get those stats and data.
Absolutely. One of my favorite memes is, it's only one straw, said 7 billion people. because you don't think you're making an impact, and then you really have to multiply yourself by everybody else on the planet, and that's really hard to comprehend, especially when you're getting into these astronomical numbers of how many straws are being used or yogurt cups, right? So I love that idea that you get them out and do their little audit, because that's something people recommend when you're trying to transition to a zero waste lifestyle is sort through your trash, see what it is and see what you can cut out and see what the issues are, right? Because if you don't know what it is, how can you fix it, I guess? Are there ways that you live zero waste or low waste in your own life or your office? Like I imagine you're very low carbon output, but what about zero waste?
Yes, for sure. We have a few rules in our office, as well as home. But in regards to office at Glowing Green Australia, you cannot go get a hot beverage or a beverage of any sort unless you have a recyclable cup, a reusable cup, I should say. So whether that's a hot coffee beverage drink or a smoothie or a juice, you dare walk back in the office with any packaging.
I wish every office had that. Can you imagine? It would be so perfect.
There's no excuse. There's everything there in the kitchen to grab and take it and to do it. And then, like on your way to work, you'll have to wait and come to work and then go get your drink because you can grab the cup. So we try to, we definitely instill that one. That's the rule in our office. There's all of the right products there if you want to go get food or whatever. And if my staff are like, well, I just want to go get a coffee and something to eat because I didn't bring lunch. Well, I'm like, well, you can take your laptop, and we advocate for that mindset lifestyle. If you're getting a little bit flat in the office and you want to go do that, double up, sit down and use the plate and crockery at the cafe to have that snack or eat that toasted focaccia instead of getting it chucked in a paper bag and bringing it back to the office.
Yes.
Sit down and do that because it's a double effect. It's switching you out, giving you time out in a different place.
Amazing. I love it.
Rethink 101 of sustainability. How you get the best productivity out of staff is giving them that space.
You sound like a dream boss. Like I think me and a lot of listeners would love to work for you. No, like that would be amazing to me because I've worked in office settings and it's so nice to go out, right? Places will give you this 30-minute time slot and you really don't have time to barely sit down anywhere by the time you travel or whatever. So then that's when all that takeout stuff happens, right? If we just had a little bit more time to sit down, even if you took an hour for lunch, you might get way more work done afterwards. Or like you said, take your laptop and do it there. I love working in coffee shops or on the train or anywhere, but some people don't. So it just is it's good you have the choice, right? That's amazing to hear.
Yeah. Very much advocate for that because I know if I have to model the behaviour to myself where I'll be like, I'm just going to go down. Our office is very close to the beach here on the Gold Coast in Australia, some of the best surfing in the world. And we very much advocate as a part of my own philosophy that when I have new interns that come as well or staff, I let them know that I am all down for you to say, hey, I want everyone to be the best version of the human that they need to be, which in turn is that's just a good duty of care we should have as every human to human, but also that in turn was going to help us build the right culture to be able to deliver on and do the things that we need to do as a company. And for me to get the best out of my staff, to think optimistically, to think solution-orientated, to be able to think outside the box, they need to have that refresh, reset all the time. So definitely advocate as the last new interns that have just come through. If you need time, I'm going to instill confidence in you that you are doing the right thing by us. You can go away and you need to go sit down at the deck right alongside the beach and want to work for an hour to reset your mind, work on something, switch yourself out. If that's going to help you be the better version of a human that you need to be, and you come back to the office and your work productivity's gone up another 10 or 20%, I'm all down and I advocate for that, absolutely, because I think when you take away that pressure of that boss thing, that you need to be over the shoulder of everyone and doing it, and you change that ownership, and I put the responsibility on them, so I make them feel accountable, that I don't push it the other way. I instill an accountability on, well, I want you to do the right thing by me as you know, your leader who looks after you and pays for you. I want you to feel that to me, not me having to push that pressure on you. And then, so that I know we've taken away a little bit around living sustainably, but that is a very big part of sustainability, as we all know. And then also just simple things, other things that we do, we make sure that we are doing our recycling as best possible as we can here. At work, we have amazing big, great glass windows in our office, so we can open and let fresh air in. We don't need to put the lights on a lot, so that's also helpful. And a really simple one that I thought of the other day was we reuse the notepads from my kids' school book.
Mm-hmm.
So, when kids, because some kids still are using notepads at school, they're not all transitioned to digital laptops.
Mm-hmm.
But those school workbooks, I reckon a third of every school book my kids have had is not being used.
Mm-hmm.
So when you add that up per year with how many years kids are at school, that's a lot of paper in those notebooks that has not been used. And a lot of people obviously just throw those books in the trash, whether they're wire bound or they don't know how to break the book apart to separate it and what can go into waste. But I take those books and we use them up, like reverse them around and just go from backwards to front. And there's a lot of paper that we use. I do not need to go buy notepads because there's so much paper in the back of my kids' school book for the times when we do need to sit down and map out stuff on paper, or I need to take notes and I'm not typing when I'm on a meeting at a phone. And then my own personal stuff is around ensuring that we cook and only cook to the amount that's needed. We mitigate food waste because that is some of the highest landfill gases that go into that for people who don't compost and recycle.
Yeah.
So that is around duty of care to food and the pressure on the food security as well, that it's all well and good that you compost, do stuff if you do have a lot of excess food waste, but how could you actually stop the need for even doing a lot of composting by not taking and consuming and eating more food than needed or cooking more food than needed? It's all good if you're using it for leftovers the next day, but as we know, sometimes we buy extra bottles and sauces and stuff, and then 6 months later people are like, oh, all these sauces and condiments have all gone off. Like, what if you actually only bought a small one or you only bought what you needed? So that's really important. Obviously, I use lower carbon fuels all the time and I advocate for that. And, yeah, just the general things like yourself. I've seen a great photo of you on your bike, Laura. Can I just change a couple of behaviours? Do we really need to drive? Could we double up? Could we walk? Could we catch a bus? Simple things like that.
So if you're by the ocean, it's probably not super hot, right? Or is it? When I was in Australia, it was very hot. It was like plus 41 or something all the time. And it was crazy. So everybody would just go to the mall and walk around in the air conditioning. Like the malls were jam packed and like you would never see anyone outside.
Yes, it does get very hot. I live by the ocean, but we do get very hot. We have different regions in Australia. We have a very big geographical, climatic areas that compare very differently. But we do have a dependency a lot more so in summer to be using air conditioning comparative in winter time on the Gold Coast in Australia to need to have reverse air cycle heating done. So, but we do have the ability to have a lot of sea breezes that are here in our office, which is great. But we are very hot. Australia is a very hot country. And especially where we are on the Gold Coast, it does get very warm. We do get to the crack of 40s, 38, have humidity, a lot of high humidity, and then a lot of areas have very, very dry regions. So we are very dependent on cooling in our country. Yeah, probably comparative to you with the heating aspect, which you would be very dependent on needing to have heating.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, so I can see that we'd be using a lot of fossil fuels for that. But in Ontario, the province that I live, you can see our electricity grid spikes in the summer months. We have July and August, which that's when it gets up to like plus 30, plus 31. And that's when we use the most energy. So we actually use a lot less to heat our homes in the winter when it's minus 30, which blew my mind when I saw those charts. Wow. I was like, why is this? Because it's crazy. Like, do we really need to be this cold? But in a lot of places in Ontario, it's like swampy almost, like it's very wet and damp. And so a lot of people have issues with mold, and basements get really wet and like gross if you aren't regulating the temperature. So it's tricky. But then also, like I've worked in buildings where the girls have to wear sweaters in the summer. It's like plus 30 outside, and then everybody's got like wool sweaters on inside because the climate is just kept so cold and there's like no windows to open. It's crazy. So I really like that you say you have windows to open and that you actually do that, because a lot of people don't. They don't use things like opening their windows or using curtains. Curtains are a big thing. Like if you close them when it's hot, open them when it's not, then it makes a big difference, right? So there's all these little things that we can do. So it sounds like you have such a cool office to work in. That's really amazing.
It is indeed. You can see a lot of, actually you can catch a lot of those videos and stuff that I have conversations with my interns and staff in our office. There's a lot of videos on my personal LinkedIn and some of our company LinkedIn.
Are those on your website?
They are on
Glowing Green,
my personal Larissa Rose LinkedIn, and also on Glowing Green Australia's LinkedIn, which is an open page anyone can be on. Okay. And then on our normal social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. But we do have a lot of feedback, and because of the culture we've created a lot with our interns, and I guess at the end of the day that's my personal methodology on life, which filters into Glowing Green Australia and my outlook and approach on how we do things, is that a lot of interns are quite keen and eager to be a part of our internship programs because of the culture and the ethics of what we have, and it gives them a really good refreshed perspective. And I had an interview just with my last intern who left last Friday, and we did a quick walk to the beach while we talked about what it has meant for her to do her internship, and we did a video. And after we'd done that, she just said how much she had really got pre-programmed a little bit on what that mentality was to have a boss. And she said, you're going to make it really hard now because you've shown me so much of how it is to have a leader that goes beyond a different, condition of programming of probably what we've had in culture over the years of what the boss is. And she said, now it's going to be really hard because I've got a benchmark, and how do I go better than that benchmark?
Thank you so much, Larissa, for coming on the show. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot about biofuels that I didn't know, and about consulting too. And it would be really nice if there were more environmental consultants working with companies. And then even when companies get their own sustainability coordinator, I think that would be really, really helpful as well, because businesses are creating a lot of trash and pollution, and they can solve it, I think.
Brilliant. And thank you so much for giving me the time to be able to chat a little bit about what's happening here in Down Under Australia. And I'm happy to strike up any other further conversations in due time as well. So thank you again, Laura. Really appreciate it.
That was Larissa Rose, Director and Senior Environmental Consultant at Glowing Green, Australia.
If you like our show and want to help save the world from all this trash we're consuming, please consider donating to the Zero Waste Countdown. You can become a patron on Podbean, you can find me on Patreon, or you can donate right on the website, zerowastecountdown.com. And if you're interested in seeing a photo of our guests, you can check us out on Instagram. That's _waste_countdown. And if you want to email me, it's laura@zerowastecountdown.com. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thanks to all our listeners in America, Canada, Australia, Germany, the UK, and wherever else you may be tuning in from. Together, we're going to change the world.
Change starts now.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast.